Welcome to Saving America. This is your host, Dr. David D. Schein. Our series of interviews for Saving America establishes that the world is full of interesting people. And when you hear this guest's background and opinions, I know you're going to agree with me that Saving America has got a great guest in Dr. Tomohiko Taniguchi. He holds an LLB from the University of Tokyo and a doctorate in national security from Tokushu University. He has had a long media history with Nikkei Business Management magazine. During that time, he also was a Fulbright visiting fellow at Princeton University. Among other impressive credentials, he was president of the Foreign Press Association in London from 1999 to 2000. He is also a multi-published author, too long a list for us to go through. Dr. Taniguchi is perhaps best known for his work with Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe as his cabinet special advisor and the Prime Minister's primary foreign policy speechwriter from January 2013 until September 2020, when the late Mr. Abe stepped down as Prime Minister. He now serves as specially appointed professor at the University of Tsukuba and senior fellow GRIPS Alliance, National Graduate Institute for Policy Studies. He teaches international political economy, Japan's strategic diplomacy, and Japan's post-war political economic development. And he teaches in English as well as in Japanese. I'm just happy to get through it in English, folks. I had the great pleasure of meeting him in person during my one visit to Japan about 6 years ago. We welcome Dr. Tomohiko Taniguchi for his first appearance on Saving America.
Thank you, Dave. I'm very much pleased to be with you for this Saving America program.
And it is so good to see you after our last all too brief visit. And as you know, we ask our guests 3 questions. In a recent article, you explained that the election of Shigeru Ishiba as the new president of Japan's ruling Liberal Democratic Party, LDP, will make Ishiba Japan's next prime minister. Can you explain how that electoral process works in Japan? Because it's quite different than here in the United States.
It is indeed very much different from what you have in the United States. Because Japan does not have any presidential system. It is a parliamentary democracy akin to what you see in the United Kingdom. If you get a majority in the lower house, then the head of the major majority party almost automatically gets elected by the parliamentarians as the nation's prime minister. Theoretically, it's not the end of the story because the appointed prime minister designate is still a designate, because the final endorsement should come from His Majesty, the Emperor, because Japan is running a monarchical, constitutional monarchical system. So that's the process. The election took place on the 27th of September. It was not, by definition, an election of some kind of nationwide election. It's, may I say, a party affair or family affair, if you like, that took place only within and among parliamentarians and grassroots members of the party, Liberal Democratic Party of Japan. And someone called Shigeru Ishiba was elected finally by the 2-phased votes. And the president of the party now is prime minister, because the whole process has just finished, and he has put together already his cabinet of ministers of line government ministries. So that's the process. What's interesting is he, after get elected as prime minister, has chosen to dissolve Japanese lower house parliament, despite the fact that he has done very, very little since taking office. He says that by calling general elections and winning endorsements from the general voters, public, then he can pursue his set of policy agendas with trust he will earn from the Japanese voters. So that's what's going on and what will likely happen. And the next day for you to watch is 29th of October, this month,
Very good.
actually.
Very good. Well, we will certainly watch for that. So, your exact question is, in your article, you comment on Ishiba's rise to power. You note that he was the leading rival of the late Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, and that his political star will likely soon fall. Would you please comment on this and how this could impact Southeast Asia?
Yes, Shinzo Abe, the late Japanese Prime Minister, whom I worked very closely with, uh, his term, his term was one of the actually longest. It lasted more than 7 years, and 7 years and 8 months. And he had a previous term in office, which lasted for 1 year. So a total of 8 years and 8 months. Believe me, this is actually the longest record ever recorded by any Japanese prime minister since Japan adopted the system of modern politics back in the late 19th century. 19th century. So during that time, Mr. Ishiba, the new prime minister, was very much in the backbench, on the backbench, and he oftentimes criticized from Abe's back. And I witnessed those what Ishiba did against towards Abe many times. As the saying goes, in the parliamentary system, your political uh, opponent may be in front of you across the aisle, but your real enemies are on your back. And that's what's happened since Shinzo Abe took office. And Shigeru Ishiba always criticized all kinds of policies that Shinzo Abe was after. So I detected a sense of grudge developed by Ishiba and between these two individuals. Now, he has tried to win the race to become the president first of the party and then get elected by the parliament as prime minister as many as 5 times. So he made a pronouncement before running that this election was going to be the last one in his political career. And then you could say for the last attempt, he succeeded. Now, he has said a number of sloppy things. By sloppy, what does it mean? I'm going to tell you what. He has proposed, number one, tax hike. I was very much surprised by his policy agendas, especially because he says that he's going to call general elections earlier than many thought. Uh, is it true that Shigeru Ishiba, the new prime minister, is going to push this policy hike agendas, and then he's thinking that he could win the vote? Very few, if any, uh, prime ministers or very few leaders of the political party have won by proposing raising taxes, plural, not singular, because he has proposed that he is going to raise personal, individual income tax, and then he is going to raise corporate tax. In addition, he said he would be interested in raising tax for capital gains. That's devastating. Reflecting that, the first trading day of this week, Monday, the stock index nosedived, fearful of Shigeru Ishiba's policy agendas. So that was point number one. And point number two is about national security or Japanese diplomacy. He has proposed establishing Asian version of NATO. What would you say to this proposal? Are the Japanese interested in bringing America further into the security situations in the Indo-Pacific, just as the United States has played the most significant role transatlantic? So, without consulting very much heavily with the US counterpart, you could not possibly propose anything like this because, after all, the United States is the most important, is the most powerful, is the most battle ready, if you like, provider of force, both to the Atlantic region and to the Indo Pacific region. Wait a second. That has been in place for many, many decades. Indeed, the United States led the coalition and won the war in Korean Peninsula and got engaged in terrible battle and bloody warfare in the Indochina to primarily safeguard the rules-based international order that in turn benefited Japan first and foremost. Why? Because in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, this country, Japan, was the only industrialized democracy where when all others, including South Korea, were extremely poor and under dictatorship. So, what's going to change even with this new arrangement of Asia's version of NATO? I don't think very little will change. The current situation for your viewers is that Japan it has been hosting the biggest number of U.S. military personnel and the most substantial military assets, naval and Air Force and Marines on the soil of Japan. By so doing, the United States is able to keep its forward deployed forces uh, in this troubled region, neighborhood of the Indo-Pacific. And the Japanese taxpayers have been very much willing to support and cover the cost of the deployment. And indeed, it's much less expensive, if you like, to put U.S. military assets and personnel in Japan rather than putting them on the soil of the state of California, if you like, in the United States. So that's the arrangement that's been tested by history and that's been in place for decades. So, what more net benefit, net gain the United States could expect from building this Asia's version of NATO is extremely doubtful, is an open-ended question. So that was the second question that came to my mind. Thirdly, uh, he has not earned reputation, if I may say frankly, as a leader that could lead complex organizations. Some say he is very much slow in making decisions. He dodges difficult questions and he dodges ultimate responsibility that otherwise should have been taken by the leader, i.e., Mr. Ishiba. Uh, and so he is not the sort of leader that's shown its leadership timber, if you like. All that being said, one should and could hope that he is a quick learner and he knows what to be done, what not to be done, especially when faced with imminent challenge of general elections. He has to be more balanced, and he has to strike a very good balance when presenting his policy agendas. But so far, those 3 points, three factors that I mentioned, have worried me very much. Once again, whether he is a quick learner or not is something that I would very much like to pay attention to.
Well, that sounds like some very valuable information for those of us who do observe world politics very closely. And we have a little bit of time left. We did want to get to our third question. With your international experience combined with your domestic experiences, how does Japan view the United States these days? Does it vary with who is president, or is there a longer term view?
Let me tell you how my previous boss, the late Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, viewed the United States. His was an interesting experience. He first dealt with Barack Obama, and then he dealt with Donald Trump. Polar opposite. And may I say, he succeeded in building very good rapport with either of these two presidents. Why? Because number one, he paid very much substantial respect to the U.S. democratic process. Either of these two presidents was who the American voters actually chose. There of course does exist a huge divide between the two parties, but the net result is you choose your president, and from outside, as Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe paid respect to the decision ultimately reached by the voting process, democratically run voting process of the United States. Never, never underestimate the resilience, robustness of the oldest democratic system that humans have, and that's about the United States. So that's how Shinzo Abe viewed. Next, uh, given the fact that the United States, the ultimate provider of security, not only to Japan, but also to the entire Indo-Pacific region, as head of the country that hosts the huge amount of US forward deployed forces, it is incumbent always upon the Japanese Prime Minister to build as good rapport as possible with the US President. So that was the second motivation. Certainly, there are growing concerns, like everyone else in Japan, about, may I say, the volatility of the US political process, the deepened division between the two ends of the political spectrum, and uh, the fact that the next, uh, I mean, if elected, Donald Trump can stay in office only for 4 years, not 8 years, 4 years. So there is a likelihood, if I may say, that Mr. Trump is going to be shorter sighted, if you like, than before. So those are some of the concerns. And if you look at the political discourse found in Japan, you can see similar voices expressed by the Japanese pundits and policy opinion formers, just as you can see similar debates and discussions in any countries, in any other country like the United Kingdom. France or Germany. But let me put just one thing. Very few people in Japan say sort of derogatory, nasty things about either one of those candidates, especially about Donald Trump. Well, it's become sort of national pastime for some countries in Europe to say very much nasty, derogatory things about Donald Trump, but you wouldn't hear much about much of those uh, dirty words spoken by the Japanese politicians or opinion formers when it comes to Donald J. Trump.
Fascinating situation. Dr. Tomohiko Taniguchi, how can our audience get more information about you and your many writings?
Right, just Google my complex name, Tomohiko Taniguchi, and you can find a lot of live interviews that I gave to international broadcast networks such as CNN, BBC, and so on and so forth. And if you cross-check my full name and Foreign Affairs, one of the prominent magazines in the United States, you can see what I wrote recently about China and Sino-Japanese relationship. And also, if you cross-check my full name and The Economist, British news magazine, then you can find what I wrote as a sort of obituary for the late Prime Minister.
Which I read also. Yes, a very fine piece and a very nice salute to a very positive world leader. This is Dr. David D. Schein for Saving America. Thank you for joining us, and please subscribe on your favorite platform.